Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a very special episode today. Three absolute legends. I'll get you guys to introduce yourselves, if that's all right, and what you've been up to. We'll start with you, Brett.
I'm Bret Robbins. I was the creative director on the original Dead Space, and now I am a game director at Absurd Ventures. And before that, I was CEO and founder of Ascendant Studios.
Yeah, hey, Glen Schofield created and directed it, Dead Space, and it's just good to see these guys again. We've made a lot of games together. A lot of
20 years.
Yeah, more than that.
More than 20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pushing 30 almost, I think.
I was thinking we made about 6 before Dead Space,
So,
right? 5, 6.
1996, we
Yeah.
started working together.
Yeah, 96.
Yeah.
We're old.
Mm.
Dan wasn't even born yet.
I was 3. Thank
Thank you, man.
That's great. That makes us feel good.
Hey,
Yeah, I was 8 when I made it.
Wonder Kid.
I was watching. Sorry, we'll go to you, Chris, and then I'll.
No worries, no worries. Chris Stone, I was the animation director for original Dead Space, and since have worked on some Call of Duties with these guys. Worked at Sony. Started SDS with Glenn, and now I'm studio general manager for Void Interactive.
The three of us were, I would say, the creative sphere of Dead Space. We'd come out, have a problem. I know you'd come in the next morning. Hey, I had an idea, and I'd have one. And Chris, I remember at some point we just stopped even coming up with deaths. We just said, "Here, you do it."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those were fun. Yeah, I remember sitting in my little cube night after night, kind of handcrafting all of Isaac's demented deaths. And I still got a book somewhere where I mocked up how dismemberment should work. And yeah.
We were all very worried about you.
Yeah. Rightfully. You should still be worried about me. Oh my God.
I am. Yeah, very.
the best one still, you know that it's the divider where he put his head on.
That was a good one. That was a fun one.
And you probably only saw it once if you played it.
Oh, dude, I don't know. I think that's a pretty common one. That was a good one.
I guess you would die a lot that
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Well, you kind of upped yourself in Callisto, Chris.
Yeah, that was kind of what we were trying to do, like take those Dead Space deaths, and it was my mind for that one as well, Although I was actually in the vocab suit for a lot of those, so that was actually me usually doing the killing. So yeah, to Brett's point, you should worry about me.
Yeah.
But it was we tried to take it to another level on those for sure.
Yeah, it was misunderstood because I wanted to do a Rob Zombie type game, in your face, but who knows?
So you guys met on Gex too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
96. Glenn was the director on that one. Chris was an animator. I was a junior designer. My first game, and it was a lot of fun. It was Crystal Dynamics back in the 90s. It was the inmates running the asylum.
Very much.
Complete chaos, and somehow we got games out the door.
No rules. It was just go.
But,
Cool shit.
The lead designer was Evan Wells, and Bruce Straley was the lead artist, and it was just a who's who, right? That had come through even Crystal, and then everybody just waited for the call from EA up the road.
So you three obviously got along from the get-go, right?
Absolutely.
And
We've all had
I
our
hired Chris.
button heads. Yeah, I still remember this guy calling me. I was working in Florida.
Yeah.
Hey, my name's Glen Schofield. Got an animator job. I'm like, who is this knucklehead?
And you're like, do I have to wear shoes?
I showed up, we had like 14 gold chains over his turtleneck. I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I expected this guy to
I'm
look
down
like.
to one now. And then this week,
You
Go ahead.
wrangled these guys back for Dead Space in that core 16-man team, Glenn?
yes, yeah. Red had worked, I think the only game you missed with us in that time was Bond.
Yeah.
But we were on Bond and wanted to get Chris back. He said, pick your team, and I'll be damned if we were able to do that.
We had a really rare opportunity to basically write our own ticket when it came to the game.
Yeah.
Glenn had negotiated, the ability to make his own game. We cherry picked a great team of like 15, 16 people to start with.
Yeah.
And then, very early on, Glenn and I were just sitting in a room trying to figure out what the game was going to be. We both liked horror. We both liked science fiction. I was obsessed at the time with Resident Evil 4, which had come out
Me
a
too.
couple years before on the GameCube.
Mhm.
And, somewhere in that first month, we landed on what if we did Resident Evil 4 in space?
Well, we wanted to remember I had come in with Rancid Moon. And so we wanted, I knew I wanted, because I had talked to Paul Lee into sci-fi horror. That's why he was, I remember he was like freaked out. He was quiet for a second on the phone. He's like, he goes, we don't do that. I'm like, yeah, but you should, because we could be number 2. Yeah, I had just finished Resident Evil 4 too. I remember at the same time, it was like, I don't want to stand and shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We
You want to move and shoot.
Huh? Yeah, because
Yeah.
it took me out of the experience. I know it made you scared, and at times it would, but I was frustrated. And we were worried about that, like would people run through the game?
Yeah. Yeah, that was funny. We had been, all playing the game to death. Let's kind of get into where, we're finishing it. And I thought the game was going to be like a 5-hour game because we just, we weren't scared. We knew the whole thing, and we just run through and blast everyone. And it was like, oh, and I was like, shit, we have a really small game in our hands.
Yeah, we were worried.
And then we got into user testing, and suddenly everyone was walking and going super slow, and they were freaked out. And I'm like, touchdown! We got a 12-hour game. This is amazing.
But don't forget, we were so worried about it that we added corruption.
Yeah,
So that it
slow
would,
you down.
so just in case it would slow you down.
You couldn't run through it.
Yeah. That's why that was there, but it turned out to be a cool mechanic for the game anyway.
Was it hard nailing 0G?
Yeah. That was. Remember early on we had that.
They floated everything up.
Yeah, we did that demo where you could switch gravity on and off.
Yeah.
We did an early prototype.
Wheel room. Yeah.
But that convinced us that we need to do it.
Yeah. It was difficult, but it was so cool. Like that, we had this demo where you hit a button and everything just went to 0G. And we're like, oh shit, we got to do this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But there was 5 or 6 things that were pretty innovative with Dead Space, and for whatever reason, we just stuck to our guns and made sure those things were in the game. Things like the no 2D HUD, the unbroken camera. We had no cinematic. I mean,
no talking for Isaac.
No talking for Isaac. We had, I think I counted. There was 2 cinematics total in the original Dead Space. We didn't have cinematics.
Yeah. Some of them were hard to do. Keep going like that.
But you always kept control. You always could move your stuff. I mean, it was very similar almost to what we did with some of the Call of Duty ones, where you still could keep control of the camera, and even in the very intro, right, where you couldn't move around.
Or what I remember is that the only thing we couldn't get diegetic at the time was his health bar, and we're thinking, what are we going to do? And somebody says, oh, I think on the back of scuba diving suits is this slide.
Yeah.
I have looked ever since Dead Space. No such thing. Cannot find it.
No,
So because I was thinking that I'm like, that's a good idea. We ought to design something like that. And then I remember, we didn't really have the big internet back then, so we did some searching, but
the health bar on the back of the suit,
the air gauge,
on nothing.
oxygen gauge, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then the big one for combat was dismemberment.
Yeah.
But the dismemberment was a total pain in the ass to design around. Like, how is this going to work? What are the weapons going to be like? We knew we wanted him to be an engineer, not a soldier. So all the weapons.
Oh yeah, right from the beginning.
Yeah, they're all tools, not guns.
What are the enemies going to do though? It's like now all of a sudden there's this huge branching sort of enemy combat motion tree of crawling and 1 leg, 2 legs, no legs.
Yeah,
but that's
how
the
they're
kind
gonna
of stuff that I know that I like and the team likes, which is like, what team is going to take that up?
Yeah.
Not too many. So you go for it. You pick a couple of them. We just happened to pick a bunch at that time.
Yeah.
It was, it felt like this was a team that just didn't say no. People were prototyping that night. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember this, but well, yeah, because you helped, we're about 4 months to go, right? And we get feedback that zero G felt sluggish.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep.
And even some of the animation. So I remember sitting there for a couple of weeks with Lewis, just going over them. You were animating it, and in the end, I think all you did was change the animation.
Yeah.
It's the same speed, but he looks better.
Yeah.
He feels better.
Yeah.
But we made a lot of changes in the end. If we got user feedback, we did it.
I mean, we had an up and running demo. I mean, we built all that shit on like the Bond stuff, right? We had gray James Bond running around there.
It was the Bond
weeks,
father,
right? Yeah. So we had that game up and like quote unquote playable pretty quickly. You know, even I still think back to that green light meeting we had where we had naked gray guy jumping around, and the leaper jumping through and dismembering it, and then we had, I think, white cancel was right after right after us.
That was I remember the original green light was up in Canada. It's me and Nick and Paulie and the guy who did all the Madden stuff. He was a good guy, John something. And Shepard.
Yeah.
It's a year and a half in, right? We had met with Mikami, who bowed. Remember that? And we were showing it to people, and they were already loving it. But he still had a green light. And we go up there, and he's like, "Wow, this is great! You know, like 2 or 3 levels already, and it's scary and everything." And we kind of stare at him, and he goes, "What?" And John Shepard goes, "Who green light the fucking thing?" He goes, "Oh, you want me to green light? Yeah, okay, all right." But you know, stuck with us all the time was Nick.
Yeah.
Nick Earl was, he would, you needed like executive, you needed some things out of the way, because back then they were publishing 60 games a year.
Yeah. So
if you came in and you were number 60, you know, you were low team on the totem pole. You remember the posters that I would go to an internal conference, like, because EA would have them once a quarter, wherever we would fly, and I'd make posters and I would hang them up in the urinals. I'd hang them up in the bathrooms, just trying to make sure that we got publicity. People knew who it were.
OG guerrilla marketing.
I remember we made that calendar. And
the big wide format.
Yeah. Like your budget's already back then. You watch Every Penny, and I like spent 10 grand. I remember one made its way to Larry Probst. I don't know if you remember Larry Probst. Guy could be tough. Yeah, and so we're in one of those franchise meetings, and I'm still scared of the 25 guys around. And he goes, "Who the fuck made this?" What this cost? Like $12,000. Not $10.
But we were always sort of under the threat, feeling like the underdog and feeling like we could get canceled at any time. And I remember we would have these studio all hands meetings. It was like, the whole studio, it wasn't even Visceral Studios back then. It was just EA Redwood Shores.
Probably about 500 people.
500 people were in an auditorium, and we'd show clips from every game being made. There's like 4 or 5 games being made internally.
Yeah.
And we show up with, our first demo there. And I think it was when we did the engineering, like the real demo.
Don't fill the whole.
And we got a standing ovation, and everyone went crazy, and we all looked at each other. We're like, "I don't think we're getting canceled."
I think half the people didn't even know what we were. It was like,
it was like a total surprise.
Yeah. Was that the moment you gained the confidence, or had you had that before then?
We were getting I remember getting confidence on our first scare. I remember I brought Nick and I'm sitting with Nick. It's me and him, and we do it, and it scares the shit out of him. And he's like, "Fuck," and I'm like, "Yes." So then after that, Nick's bringing people in. We started getting people excited about it, and then John Riccatello took over at some point as president of VA, and he came in and immediately he was behind it. So we were starting to get a lot of people. The only people, it was the guy whoever ran European marketing hated it. He just didn't want. And then I named it Visceral, and he really hated me. Just it wasn't a hard kind of guy, but other than that, it was.
Well, it's weird because they actually cut our marketing budget.
For Mirror's Edge, got it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Mirror's Edge.
Well, tell them that story. What happened?
So it was
Wow.
us and Mirror's Edge. We're releasing about the same time, and they had and they were trying to figure out the budget for that launch window, and they did all these internal tests or whatever, like Metacritic analysis,
Like mock scores.
and they had Mirror's Edge at like a 90, and they had Dead Space at a 70.
What?
And they're like, no, they had Dead Space at a
Yeah.
70. This is internally, and this is right before, like
Oh,
a couple months before we shipped.
The morale hit on the team. I mean,
brutal.
Yeah,
it got
That's
out.
ridiculous.
they weren't looking at an unfinished game. We were almost done, and they thought we were going to be like a 72, and they slashed our marketing budget,
Yep.
and they doubled down on Mirror's Edge. And we ended up, and Mirror's Edge did well. It was like in the 80s, but we ended up with a 90. And there was something, it
I
was
don't think
funny.
Mirror's Edge was that high.
I actually think it may have helped us because we were such a good game that didn't have a lot of marketing telling everyone we're going to be the best game ever. People discovered it on their own. And there's sort of like a word of mouth cult following that really quickly generated around. Everyone's like, have you ever heard of this thing? It's
We
amazing."
felt like an underdog. I mean, I still remember Christmas time. I was visiting with my sister, and I think our reviews had just come out.
Yeah.
And was it Christmas time?
Well,
No,
it
it
was
was a little before.
it would have been like we came out in October, and I think that's when the
So maybe I was there for Thanksgiving, but I remember being on a text thread with you guys,
I was in France.
and it was like one of you's like, "We got a fucking 100." I'm like,
I know.
"What the hell?" And then the next one, "We got 90." So you start watching the Metacritic, we're like, "How is this happening?"
canceled,
Like, this is
canceled all my meetings
crazy.
that day. Yeah.
None of us. I mean, we had gotten beaten down so hard by that none of
We
us
never
expected
even
that.
thought of. Yeah.
Never expected.
And then winning a bunch of awards. I mean, I remember being at the DICE Awards and not thinking that we were up against, Gears of War and all these other for Action Game of the Year.
Mhm.
And then when they called the name, it was surreal.
Yeah.
I never expected it.
Yeah, we got a lot of good. I mean, we got nominated for an Annie Award, which is like that was pretty rare for a video
got a
game.
couple
back
of
in the day.
BAFTAs.
BAFTAs. I mean, the amount of that really high level awards that we were nominated for. Again, we thought the game was fun. I mean, from we've been playing it in white boxes and things like that, but I don't think any of us expected that by any means.
But I think we knew we really took the time to design it. Being a horror game, every second really counts, right? Even when you're just adding them up for the tension to build up to something scary. But we were trying. I mean, we tried the Bart Room. We did, Zero G with no sound, or the
vacuums.
vacuum. We tried, so many different things that were kind of new.
Well, the hard part too was, horror doesn't really work until all the pieces are in place. You need the music right, the lighting
You
right.
can't really mock it up.
Yeah, it's not scary when like the textures aren't finished or anything. So I really didn't know if the game was even scary until the last 5-6 months. And then we started having people play it and they're like, oh yeah, it's all coming together and working. But it was like faith for 2 years of just like, hopefully it's scary. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there were some parts that would scare the new people when we brought them on.
We got little
That's a
bits and
whole
pieces,
that you
but,
never
like,
knew.
for the whole game, it was
When did the necromorphs come into play? When did that start to develop?
Early.
They were
Early,
they were the very first enemy that we animated. I remember the motion on them was very different from what it ended up as.
Really?
But let me tell you, it took months. I wasn't happy with anything. We started with amoebas. We started with bottom of the ocean fish. We started, and I had some of the best, and we had a little bit of money for a concept art.
Yeah.
And so I went out to some of the best in the world. I like 3 of them, and wasn't happy with any of them. And and then finally, I went back to what scares me the most is just a deranged human, because they have that, no matter what they look like, because they have some, to me, they have an intelligence that that there's an intelligence, you think, that when a man is insane, there's no hold. So we went back to that, and then it still wasn't getting anything. And I remember just sitting down one day with Ben Winat. He said, I got this this 3D, this new 3D thing. And what is it? It's just the one everybody uses.
ZBrush.
Yeah, ZBrush. Yeah.
So he started kind of building, and we just kept pushing and pulling, and we came up with a flyer with a head, and we liked that.
Leaper.
And then we went on to the lead. Yeah. So that's how it started. That's how we, and some of the best in the business weren't getting it. It was just that was a time, I think, after what are the ones with Will Smith that are kind of funny?
The Will Smith.
I Am Legend.
No, the funny one.
Men in Black.
Men in Black.
Oh,
Men in
Men in
Black. Yeah. So there was that kind of humorous monster, what had been in a couple of things that I was getting at the time.
The other thing with the necromorphs was, for the combat to work, for the dismemberment to work, they all had to have these long extremities that would come off of them in weird ways, and that kind of helped inform the look, a little bit. They had to, have the big claws come out of the back, or tentacles or whatever. And I remember, I think it was you, Glenn, with the plasma cutter.
Oh yeah.
With the plasma cutter, and it was kind of problematic because it was shooting, but you'd miss the dismemberment because it was at one angle. And then it was like, well, what if you hit a button and it switched flat, and now you could hit them if they're at a different angle? And it was like, oh, that's actually really fucking cool.
Yeah, and
that
it
works.
turned out to be a good enemy there. Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot. I remember
I mean,
playing
good
with
weapon.
those,
Yeah.
but then we'd also have to play with all the motion sets to make sure that the extremities were hittable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They had to
So it was
hold their pose. so you could
Totally.
shoot it.
Like
Yeah,
the original necromorph, the blades were set back behind his back, and they almost had like a skeletal angel wing vibe, but you couldn't hit them. So we're like, okay, well, let's bring them up. Let's get them up now this way, so they're aiming towards you, and now you could actually hit them. And
And
there was a lot of playing with that stuff.
And
It was
that's
pretty
like,
fun.
to me, that's one of the most iconic silhouettes now. in
Yeah.
games,
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah.
slasher.
Yeah, the
look.
blades upset.
Oh, right.
100%. Yeah, without a doubt.
The dismemberment, was that tough on that generation of consoles, that hardware to pull off?
Yeah, well, yeah, because remember we had to figure out, you cut an arm
Yeah.
off, you
Yeah.
had to spawn in a capsule, so you're not just looking inside. Like it had to be smart enough to know to spawn a capsule. We spawned physics objects, so the arm became a physics object, which you could then pick up and shoot back and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty insane.
It was
Like,
complicated
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure, but I will say that like the engine at the time, the way the animation system was designed in that engine,
The Bondfather.
it wasn't easy by any means, but we had all the tools we needed to do it, which was really amazing. Like being able to attach different animations to different limbs, and
yeah.
there was some really cool stuff we were doing. But yeah, without a doubt, like knowing what happens when you cut an arm off, now you got to change a whole behavior state. So now he's trying to attack you differently, or take a leg off, and now you have to have a whole new
The crawling
conflict.
was so cool, though.
Being able to hit them on the ground when they're crawling flat at you, making
Yeah.
sure the collision volumes work properly.
That was another giant system that
Yeah.
we said, okay, we're gonna bite up. But when we finally had the final decision on, okay, they're gonna be based on humans, they're gonna have to be dismembered. That actually solidified so much. Like now we knew every monster has to have something that's dismemberable.
Yeah.
And every weapon has to be something that dismembers. So it actually made things sometimes easier, because it was tougher with Callisto, because we're like, well, you can whack them, and they're like, well, that can be anything,
Because you kind of got that foundation.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that kind of solidified it. And then the suit, I remember having Chi do at least 100 helmets, just the helmet.
Really?
Oh yeah, at least. And the suit though it was first the suit. I can't tell you how long. I mean, he was just doing sketch after he
Well,
did
you
it all
picked
by
the right one, guys.
Well, I knew I wanted Stripes the one way because I hadn't seen it, and then we talked about it being that it would it would work as him as an engineer.
But the ribbing idea was
Yeah.
sort of wanting to have things feel slightly organic in a weird way, metal organic.
Yeah.
And that really worked. In the helmet, there was like a kind of hockey mask.
There was some of
sort
that,
of
yeah.
like motif going on with a lot of the
Jason
sketching.
Voorhees sort
Yeah.
of. But a lot of the horizontal ribbing though was also kind of a design constraint as well, because you want him to be able to move and twist and bend and all this. And some of the early suits had some different
Oh,
angles. But as soon as you started twisting and shifting, all those things would start colliding. So it became this very horizontal ribbing. So it allowed it to compress and expand and twist without all that stuff crashing in. Same thing with the arms, all that ribbing in the arms allowed the arms to move. So some of it was design constraints, some of it was artistic choice, but it all, in the end, it was just all crafted together perfectly.
So when did the boss fights come into play?
Well, the first Dead Space really only had 2 boss fights, or 3, I guess.
2.5 is the way we looked at it.
Yeah.
2.5, yeah.
A lot. We had
The turret.
the turret
That
one,
was
yeah.
like-
We had the Leviathan, and then you had the turret moment, and then you had the hive mind at the end.
But you had the mini bosses. You had one of those dudes,
The
the quadra,
brutes.
Oh, yeah,
the brutes.
yeah.
Brute.
Yeah, we had the brute mini bosses, which were
We
fun.
had planned like 1 or 2 more, but
Yeah.
I don't even remember what they were.
They became simple, like the room with the tentacles that would come and slap you on the bridges and kind of little things like that.
Well, that guy he was new.
Yeah.
I remember we hadn't designed him, and then we're like,
We had it late.
Yeah, the slap tentacle.
yeah, I mean, it definitely came from, some of it came from Half-Life, but
Well, it was also taking the drag tentacle that we had done
exactly what we
horizontal,
had, yeah.
and we're like, okay, well, how do we make this?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what if we made it into a slap tentacle? And now it's
Well, then we had the guy with the that came out. He was on the wall too.
Yeah.
All that was like,
yeah,
hey, we can take that guy and put him on a wall.
yep.
Not all of it was planned, but I love that stuff where you just take something you have and make something different from it.
Yep. The guy on the wall, I remember when you brought him up to me, and I think you had just watched Aliens, and they had
That's it.
they had
yeah,
the lady on the wall who came to life, and you're like, oh, what if we had a guy on the wall who came to life? I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. So like
We
now it comes to
used
me
it,
for
right?
absolute with that. No, I mean we ended up making a new asset
Oh,
for it,
okay.
but yeah, we mocked it up with just a guy, and yeah, that was great. That guy ended up super scary.
But I kind of asked for the same thing on Callisto, couldn't get it done. Remember how many times?
Yeah.
It was just it's
Technology.
a different animal now.
Yeah.
And working at home is not as easy.
Did you get more inspiration from film or other games, would you say?
For the design, it was definitely games. It was Resident Evil 4 was the
Resident Evil
main
4 was
touch
it.
point. Yeah.
And Silent Hill, man.
Yeah.
I feel
But-
like for look though, it was more film. I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
Event
I would say
Horizon.
Event Horizon was sort of the final thing. I mean, when I watched it and saw, just heard them say, this is a spaceship that went through hell. Wow, that's just a cool, different vibe, and you always want a elevator line, just like one line. That's why we came up with Resident Evil in Space. We all loved Resident Evil, and the Resident Evil 4, it showed us a lot, like a lot of things that we really liked. I mean, I'll never forget that blind one.
Yeah.
Holy, I'm playing 1 and it took like 3 hours, and then you come later and there's 4 or something.
yeah.
Well, remember the big guy in the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I came in, grabbed the thing, blew him up, and you're like, it took me like an hour. Where'd you get that? And so when we would, some of that stuff we wanted to get into the game. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, did we ever get? We loved the village, that house.
Yeah, well, that was one of our first demos, was doing that engine room to be like a
Yeah.
village type fight. We got them coming in, yeah, and that was really like almost our combat demo.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, now we know the combat's really fun and it works once we had that all working.
I think that's when we started using the vent system too.
Yeah.
That was a pretty innovative thing at the time
Yeah.
too. Like just
Yeah.
being able to pop out of anywhere in your room. We're like, oh shit! Like now it's not just doors and windows. You're like, it could be anywhere.
You could close a door on them, but they'll follow you through the
Yeah,
vents.
you hear them
come out.
clanking around, and then you're
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, so one thing that we had on the team was I asked every department when they're doing something, to think innovation. That every department had to deliver on some sort of innovation. And, I'll be damned if everybody, I mean, that's why you see a lot of that. People weren't saying no.
But we
yeah,
also, it was
we
also
paid homage to people like that one.
there was so much. It felt like so much of it happened in the moment too, though, right? Where we'd just be we'd be sitting around and be like, God, like what if we did this, or what if we had tendrils that came out of the back? What if it was a baby that crawled? Right? There was so much that felt like it just happened in the moment, and then we would just go off and kind of mock something up for it. But I mean, creature-wise, I know
You gave me a lot of shit on having a baby in there.
dude, the baby was fucking scary, man. Little tendril baby. Well, that's a good one.
But, should definitely give credit to Ben Winot, because he would do a lot of the creature design. He would, you come in, you'd have an idea on a Friday, you'd come in on a Monday, and you would have built something and have a little test animation of it running around and how it would move. And Ben was a VFX guy. He wasn't an animator or a modeler, but he was. I mean, he was just incredibly skilled.
Super creative.
He was like a production designer for us.
Yeah.
He would go, we talk about, hey, this area's got to be like a lot of this or that. And then he would build something. Now, we would give it to the artist and they would go nuts. But
yeah, no, he did creatures, he did animations.
He did mock anything up.
He did he built a lot of the look for the levels. And so, yeah, it was just, it made everything very efficient to have it, you go from an idea to a vision of how it could look, it wouldn't work properly. You'd have to, then spend a lot of time to make it work within the engine. But for us, for the leadership group, we're like, yes, that's awesome. Let's do that, and it made everything move a lot faster from a vision point of view.
And you could take it and refine it. I mean, once you knew kind of the goal, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, and it's with anything creative, right? You see an idea and it makes your brain start spinning and you start thinking about 20 other things, right? So he gives you a nugget and then we kind of run off and develop it into this fully fledged out, amazing thing, right?
Well, we had a small group and we were in the war room, and then there was this next group and probably about 10, 12 people that were like sort of the brain trust of it. And Ben would be one of them from the creative point of view. He was quite dude, but when he said something, you listened. And yeah, we had Ben, I do remember that I at some point had given the art direction over to somebody. And I'm seeing all these things come in at some point. I'm like, what the hell? I have no idea how that. So I go into an art direction meeting and they're all doing it. And art director picks these. And after the meeting, I said, dude, I have no idea how you picked them or why. And I'm like, how'd you pick them? He's like, well, I liked them. I'm like, what's the plan? He's like, what do you mean? So that's when we stopped, if you remember, and went back and said Gothic. And that's when Ben really kind of took the Gothic theme and helped bring it into it. So if you notice, I don't know, you can see the arches and, stuff that's more of a Gothic theme in there.
The other big environment sort of idea was negative space. The idea that, because we knew we were making a corridor or room game and that it was always going to be fairly contained, but we didn't want it to feel like you're always just in a tunnel. So, the walls had a lot of holes in them and you could see other things kind of, through them, and this idea of negative space and ribbing, and it just made everything feel larger than the environment we were really playing with.
And dangerous too, like all these little protrusions that just made everything feel. And look, in our audio, Don Becca was a freaking master. Like just the audio treatment in rooms and just the sounds that you would hear just without even anything happening. You were already like, shit, what's about to happen? Like it was really masterful. So
I remember
it there.
I would go run into Don when I had a new idea. I would go in there and I would knock on his door. And he's always listening to, trying to do something creepy. And every time I would scare the shit out of him by knocking on the door. So we ended up putting a knock in Dead Space that you, I don't know if I ever heard playing it, but it's in there because people have talked about it. Like, what the hell is that? Because to him, it's like this disembodied thing, but when you hear it in the game, it's so weird.
Well, you've got the team names as like text logs and stuff, don't you? Like some of the team members are in audio logs
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. But did you hear how we came up with the name the Ishimura?
Go on.
So we had one of our first 18 people's name was Nishimura, and we're all working together, and this one day this says I'm quitting, and I'm like, why? And he goes, because I'm getting too much feedback on my work or something. And it was just weird. And so he quits, and we had called it the Nishimura.
We had already had
we were all excited about it. So we just, when he left, we took the N off. Ishimura.
No, it's the
What was the most challenging part for each of you in your respective roles on Dead Space? I'm curious.
Well, for me, definitely the dismemberment on combat was an early challenge, and figuring out how that was even going to be fun. And then, probably doing, like, I did a lot of the room design and a lot of the, like, what the maps were going to be. So I designed most of the levels with Ben, and that was like constantly trying to one the room design. Okay, we came up with these things, we got to go even further for the next level. And so there was like a good year period of just like really focusing on the room design, because it's a room-based game.
But plus on top of that, I wanted those like the big puzzles, and big
Set
moments
pieces,
and set pieces. Yeah, so there was a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was really fun part of it, but it was, challenging to come up with kind of one-upping yourself constantly when you're, laying the whole thing out.
Yeah, from an animation point of view, I mean, I think there were personal challenges. So being that I was the one that did all the paired kills, it was always just like, okay, well, what is the most bizarre, the most terrifying, yet almost tongue-in-cheek, just a little bit way to kill Isaac, right? And so it was figuring out, like, what were they going to be? How are the enemies going to do that? And then the other side of that, like, what was the most brutal way that Isaac could kill each of those enemies, right? Whether it's, grabbing the leaper and ripping his arms off, or like throwing the baby on the ground and punting him across the room. That was definitely challenging to try to hold that bar. But then from a technical point of view, dismemberment and trying to build the motion trees for all those creatures really was super complicated. And we used mocap on Isaac. We didn't use mocap on any of the other enemies. So every other enemy was totally hand keyed. And so, I mean, I was Isaac, so I suited up. I was Isaac's mocap, and then pairing that with the enemies to try to make that look just as good as human motion was really tricky too. It just wasn't something that we had done before. Mocap was still pretty early in its infancy, so we weren't doing it for complicated characters or anything like that.
It was really, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that was definitely, there were a lot of different challenges, but those were probably a couple of the biggest ones for sure for animation.
The Dead Space name, they didn't like that originally, did they?
All right, we went for it right from the beginning.
We liked it, yeah.
And they said to me, Glenn, it's gonna cause Dead Space on the shelf, and I'm like, that's if it sucks. Like, wow, how do you go into it? But no, even the logo we made on the team, and we just at the end we're like, no, we're stuck with it. We want this name.
Yeah.
And
remember we had James Wan do one of our trailers.
Yes.
Really?
From Saw, the director of Saw. Yeah, he came in. Glenn and I met him. It was awesome. He was super excited.
He's a good guy.
Really good guy. And we actually got a little contract with a consulting contract with him, and he cut one of our trailers. And it was awesome. It was like one of the more innovative ones.
Yeah. So Dead Space, EA, and I would say maybe other publishers at that time, they didn't trust us. So they said, you need to, it was beginning, and they're starting to give directors this, hey, make this thing cinematic, and they're like, you don't know how to do horror.
EA was really into films at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah. You need to go get a director to consult with you. So I had lunch with I spent an afternoon at Wes Craven's house in Hollywood, and then I went out with Eli Roth, and then finally I spent 3 hours the first time with James Wan. We just hit it off, talked about horror and everything. But at the end of the day, James Wan, by the time we get them and they sign them, we're like a year in or something like that. And so we don't need them at all. And plus, his specialty is camera. So when I tell him we don't need camera, he's like, what? So we got him cut a trailer.
Yeah. I remember him sitting with me in my cube while I was authoring one of the paired kills. I think it might have been the Twitcher, where he stabs a dude and holds him up and then just jams the spike into him over and over and over again. And he was loaded. He was laughing. He's like, "It's fucking brilliant." And I'm like, "Well, what do you you have any thoughts?" And he's like, "No, it was fucking great. Like like these are amazing." So, but
he's brilliant with the camera.
Good
like I don't know how he does some
but that was what his trailer had really cool, because he ended up when he was doing the trailer, he grabbed the controller and we started just recording what he was doing with the camera. He did all the spins and all this cool stuff. You remember also Zack Snyder came in and saw and watched. We presented to Zack Snyder.
Yeah. He did. I sat in on his pitch.
Okay.
He pitched the Owls as a game way before the movie.
Yeah. Because this was after 300.
Yes.
And after Dawn of the Dead.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, he came in and he sat and watched us play Dead Space for like an hour. He loved it.
After a while, they bring in. We showed it to.
God, you had everyone there.
Williams, to Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Carrot Head, and you see, EA had the greatest campus. Man, it was at that time they had just opened it. Right there, an amphitheater. It was
everybody wanted to come there. It was
all the time. EA was the place. I mean, they were the company at the time. Them and Activision. I think the industry's going to miss those two.
Yeah, it was really before all these big companies had these big, amazing campuses, right? And so EA was one of the first, and it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was.
Were you guys grinding like 12 hours a day on this project, like a passion project, or was there a lot of crunch type of thing?
Yeah.
But
it was different.
Nobody, nobody was going, we need you to work 12 hours.
No.
There was none of that.
Different. It was out of passion.
Yeah. If they didn't stay, it was okay, because we were hitting our deadlines.
Yeah. And it's not like anybody, I definitely compared to like some of the other projects, the Lord of the Rings or the Godfather projects or any of those, I can remember those where it's like you had to be there, 60-hour weeks plus, right? Otherwise you're just
Lord of the Rings got screwed.
It was brutal. I remember sleeping under my desk in a sleeping bag for those games. Yeah. But Dead Space, there were definitely plenty of late nights, but at least for me, I always liked that because there wouldn't be a ton of people there. The lights would all be off. I would play some spooky ass music in my cube and just sit in there and just animate the most grisly things I could think of. And if someone would come to my cube, it would usually scare the shit out of me because I was so impressed with what I was doing. But we were doing 12-hour days for sure, but it wasn't because you felt like it was in demand. It was just you were so stoked about what you were doing, and we so excited about what we were doing.
We were so into I believe we shipped 2 weeks early, and we got a letter from Sony Europe at the time that said, cleanest game of the last generations. They had never seen a game with so few bugs, because at some point we were going after debugs.
Yeah,
and we were just going with let's get them all.
And part of that, I remember so we shipped in, I think it was October of 2008. Around March or April, we locked new features on the engineering side. We hit engineering alpha basically. So we weren't adding new shit constantly right up until the end, which is usually what you did on a project.
Remember, we stopped the one, we just stopped right there, and the one enemy wasn't done. So we said, you got to use what's there. And
Yeah.
so you just
Started-
start the Twitcher
Yeah.
and spinning them.
Yeah, the Twitcher was just a regular necromorph that I went in and like sped up every one of the animations by like 87% and then added like an additional, like an additive pose on top of him. Otherwise, he was essentially using the exact same animations of all the other necromorphs. Maybe I think he had a new idol that had him just shake, and that was it.
Yeah, it was, and what was remarkable is that we held that line.
Yeah.
Like usually you try to do that on a game, but then, you get some bad, user testing, you have to change a bunch of stuff. And we stepped to our guns and we're like, no, this is all we're doing. So that level of focus, like I feel like Dead Space, we focused on a handful of things and went deep on them and made them great, as opposed to trying to do every single thing possible and do it all at a mediocre level. And definitely that discipline at the end helped us ship well. We were just polishing something that we really believed in.
Yeah, I mean, it helped too. I think that we were on an engine that was pretty mature.
Yeah.
We had done a lot of stuff on it, but you go back and look at some of the stuff we did. I mean, just having physics objects everywhere alone. Like physics objects are such a colossal pain in the ass. Even today.
Yeah.
To think that we were able to, in general, have limbs flying off dudes and turning into physics objects, and you could pick them up and throw them around and they wouldn't become some sort of like perpetually active object shaking in the world. It's kind of amazing, that level of focus and refinement that we got, really.
And we had been working together at least 10 years by then, right? So and we could have brought a bunch of other guys on. I mean, we still talk with Demetrius and Atsushi and Lighters and this and that, right? Matter of fact, a lot of them have worked with us all these years. And it's just when you find, and it seems like every game or every studio, when we'd move to another place, we'd grab a few other good people who wanted to come. And so to a point where at Activision, I think we took 47 people.
We all left on our own accord.
And so we all know, a lot of us have known each other, and like in movies, you'll see cinematographer and the director and the writers, they all work together more on some of the actors. And so we just, it felt like it was this shorthand, the second hand to us. It's funny because I was thinking, we just went from one game to another. We were so excited. We did what we did. We finished the game. We took our vacation and we came back and we go, okay, let's next. And I remember saying to you guys, hey, I got a new IP, and no one believed it. And then we were just so excited, right? But I was, that was probably my hardest part, was to, it was always red tape. Is it going to get canceled? It took that year and a half, and I was stressing, is it going to get canceled? Is it going to get the green light? Because my deal with Paul at the time was like, hey, give me a year with, without bothering us. And luckily they never really did.
Yeah. That's worth mentioning. Like, we had very little interference from EA while making that, and
which is the opposite of now, isn't it?
Except for the Metacritic score thing.
Yeah, that was right at the end. But the development of it, there weren't company notes, there weren't executives kind of coming through and telling us to change stuff. And I give Glenn a lot of credit for this. He was kind of the bullet sponge for a lot of that. But like we were able to make it the way we wanted to make it. I never had a lot of interference, and that's them telling us what to do, and that's credit to them too. Like they let us make the game.
Yeah.
But imagine this one. So I find out, I don't know, a couple months before the game's going to ship, that they got Left 4 Dead, right? It's coming out just before us. It's got the word dead on the cover, and it's got a severed hand. And I'm like, don't we work for the same freaking company? And I remember arguing with that one. That one really.
Did you crack it?
That probably the team too.
Yeah.
Did you crack it at them for that? Did you complain?
Oh yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
I mean, it was how can you do this? And nobody saw it as a problem. I'm like, if I came up with it, it would be a problem. It is a problem, But you somehow both of them did really well, right?
Yeah.
But who knows if one, cannibalized the other? But they were different games. But
They have a very different play style too.
both hard. And you're a kid in Kansas who buys one game.
Who has
So-
who has the wackiest ideas out of you three?
Probably Glenn.
Yeah, I will say anything.
Wacky or good? I think what are we?
If you throw out, if you're a boxer and you throw out 1,000 punches, you get a good percentage.
I think we all have our day. Like I've heard
Yeah,
some great
yeah,
ones
yeah.
out of both of these guys. Like
Yeah.
every now and then I've got my time. So I think that all three of us are super creative in general. But yeah, Glenn's out there sometimes for sure. He gets inspired by things you wouldn't expect someone to be inspired by occasionally.
Yeah, even though I've been the director over the years and been lucky enough to make a lot of my games, I couldn't have done it with these guys' help and their big ideas. Let me tell you my favorite with Bret, and he knows this one too. And he's got a million good ideas. But when we shot the necromorph out into the escape pod, right? And Bret's coming up with the next level. That was it. We shot him out. And Bret's like, I have him getting picked up by the military vessel that you called in for the SOS. And then the military vessel crashes into when I thought that was great. That was just a really good idea of how to take this thing that we thought was done and make it tragic. Because then we went into that.
You go into the ship.
So
yeah.
I like how, I like it for myself, but I like how it happens with these guys. You have an idea, and then it spurs all these other ideas and make it better, right? There's a word for it, like when Apple came out with, iTunes and everybody else had apps or whatever. And, I love it. There was a little guy, nice little guy. He was we hired like 2 interns. It might have been, if you remember his name.
Which engineer?
Yeah, don't say
Felker.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think it was him. He comes to me one day and he's new with me, says, and he was scared, I could tell. He says, Glenn, when Isaac dies, his thing on his back should turn red. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. That's great. You got it. So the greatest ideas or biggest or smallest can come from anybody. And that's what we always encourage because, that guy was doing that. And that's what he's thinking about,
But it is crazy how like one idea will just lead to another. I even
Yeah,
remember in the early days, like when we had some of the early meetings on Dead Space, I remember Glenn would give homework to people, right? There'd be 15 of us in the room and Glenn would be like, okay, you think of this and you think of this, you think of this, you come back, we're going to talk about what you did. And I remember my homework was to go off and think of like crazy enemy types. And one of the ones I came back with that we ended up doing was pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
And so, big fatty, full of the things, and it worked brilliantly. We had it in the game, and then one day Glenn, I think it was Glenn said, it's like, well, what if we put one of the babies in the stomach instead of this, or we're a necromorph? I think you said.
No, that was one of
Who
the
said that?
designers.
Was that one of the
Wasn't
designers? But
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
whoever it was, like
Yeah.
we just have these, you have a great core idea, and then all these other super creative people start chiming in, and so now we have this great, enemy delivery device in the pregnant. You can walk into a room and you shoot her in the stomach, and now another enemy comes out. Not just the little swarm that are annoying, but like legitimate enemies.
That was like, we were trying to play against type in a few ways, like headshots. Headshots were always a big deal with any enemy. But if you shot off the slasher's head, it would charge you.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't do a headshot. You got to do something else. You got to get the legs.
You have to figure out the recipe to kill them.
And the pregnant was the same way. It's like, look, now you got a problem with body shots. You go for the body, you're going to get a whole other enemy spawning coming after you. So you really had to reinforce shooting the head, shooting the arms.
Legs. The
So-
line gun on the legs. That was the key of the pregnant.
Right. So it was just another, like, okay, how do we make Dismemberment interesting and different for all these different enemy types?
Yeah, that was fun.
I'm guessing you guys played the remake. I'm curious what you think. Was there anything that they did better than you guys?
It looked better. Yeah.
It looked great, although the original holds up.
It does.
Pretty
I know.
well. No, it looked great. I thought there was like a coat of paint over both the look and the design that were slight improvements in several areas, and a couple of areas that was like, okay, you could have left well enough alone. I like the fact that they used the Dead Space 2 0G controls, which are I consider to be better than the Dead Space 1. So that to me was an improvement. They had little things in the level design that were interesting, being able to toggle different switches. Do I turn off the lights or do I spawn something? Yeah, having it one big continuous. I had always wanted that. Actually, I really wanted that on Dead Space 1. You can go back to other decks. It all felt like a continuous space. We never got it technically. We couldn't do it. They did it, they made it feel like one big ship. And that was awesome. So no, those guys, they did a great job on it. And it still felt like Dead Space. The levels, the level design and the rooms were exactly the same. They didn't change any of that. They didn't change any of the plot beats. 23, it works a lot better than it did in 2008. Like in 2008, you still had, the legacy of games like Half-Life and other games where the protagonist didn't speak and you were trying to really embody that avatar yourself. I think these days you've had so many third-person games where they speak that it's actually a little weirder for them not to speak. So I think it was the right call for today. For back then when we were doing it, 50-50.
Yeah, I was kind of torn on it. I mean, it didn't bother me. And I think maybe to Brett's point, the thing I was worried about when I saw they were coming out with the remake is that they were gonna take something that was already so great and try to reimagine it in some way. And they stayed really, really true to the game. And made me really happy. I mean, it filled me with some pride too. The fact that so many years ago we made a game that still today you release that exact same game more or less, and it's still fucking fun, right? Yeah. Isaac's voice, I was a little torn on.
Me too.
It pulled me out of it a little bit sometimes.
I was the same. Funny enough, yeah.
But Dead Space 2 had him talk.
Yeah, but I don't know. You say it almost sounded too refined.
Yeah. What about Easter eggs like 0G basketball? Whose idea was that?
That was, I want to say mine, because that was part of the level design. That was on the residential deck. I forget what we call it, the commons deck.
I remember somebody coming to me and talking about basketball, and it sounded like that's the kind of stuff that we were just doing.
Yeah, I don't want to take credit for it, but I do remember, because I was designing that level, that we wanted to have a few things. Like one of the other levels had a firing range. We wanted to have a few just activities you could do on the ship that had nothing to do with fighting necromorphs and just fun shit. Yeah. And we couldn't afford a lot of them, but that one was fun to design.
I mean, we had the systems in place too. I mean, our physics system was really good. I mean, it really, really was. And it was early Havoc, and it was it was super solid. And so we had the mechanics to be able to pick things up and throw them around, and you could design the physics shapes for them, and it was pretty effective. And so
I thought that level was Pitts.
I think it was. I was going to say, I think that might have been Pitts that did that. Yeah, I had the same thought.
Yeah.
It was cool though. But yeah, that's the thing. Like the best Easter eggs are ones where you already have the mechanisms to do them, and you can just kind of insert fun things into it.
You know that Nicole is named after my daughter.
Really?
She's in the industry. Yeah, she's been in it 7 years.
Interesting.
I mean, these guys saw her born.
That's crazy. It kind of trips me out seeing her work with us, and I'm like, I remember you as the 3-year-old coming in my office and playing with my action figures on the floor.
Yep, she started playing really young.
All my Spawn figures.
You know what? I do remember knowing the ending of the game. I knew I wanted to have a scare, and after we had it was just, and knowing that you have a good ending is so.
It's important.
It kind of makes the rest of the game. You're like, it's cool. We got a good ending.
Well, what's funny is early in the development, we had a story outline and everything, and we're kind of going through it and thinking about it. Nicole wasn't part of the story originally, and at some point we all just kind of looked at the story and we're like, this is just missing something important
around with the religion.
That came in a little later too. Yeah, both of those concepts were just the story was too thin, wasn't interesting enough, and Isaac there had to be something pulling at him more than just survival, and that's
emotional key.
Yeah, we needed some emotional piece,
but the religion turned bigger than I can remember thinking something was missing in the game. And there was I seem to remember them both being a little bit separate,
Right.
but I remember even thinking, "This what's missing," and it took a while to go, "Oh, religion would be good," and then like, how do you create a religion? You know, you have to come up with faith, and so I was reading about like how L. Ron Hubbard came up with it, and it didn't help. But yeah, there was a couple big ideas that came in.
Well, we wanted the marker to be driving everyone crazy,
Yeah.
and then having them become religious zealots made sense. So like, okay, that'll make them crazy.
Well, it still goes back further. Soon as when they pull it out and they go, it's not a meteor, it's something, you know, made. Even scientists would go, "Oh, this is the thing that created man."
Right.
Some scientists, others would go, "Yeah, whatever," but they now had something concrete. So and then all of a sudden somebody creates a language for the game. Remember they and I think what it put Schofield was here, and my name's like all over. And
But we had graffiti that was in the unitology language,
yeah,
and I think there was like hidden codes in it.
yeah, there were.
People would translate.
That first day they discovered
Crazy.
You could unlock a suit if you put in the right
Was
code.
Schofield on the gun? The name
Yeah,
Schofield?
Schofield tools.
Yeah.
Schofield tools, yeah.
Schofield Tools.
Well, you guys are usually hiding something. You should see what I've been in Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I don't even
You
know.
can't talk about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was Schofield tools back in the day. Well, it was Schofield tools, and then I think when we left, it became Timpson tools for Dead Space 2.
Oh, Dead Space 2.
So, but yeah, it was Schofield tools initially for sure.
I said we had other Easter eggs in there, like you find a text log of dead crew members, and it was all the dev team. You know, we did lots of little things like that. A lot of the crew members' names and the audio logs were from team members. So it was just fun stuff we threw in there that only we would know about.
Well, even the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, right? And who sung that, right?
That was one of our audio people.
No, I got that from my daughter.
Yeah.
I was coming home, looking for it. But then I go in the next day, and I'm talking to Scott,
or something.
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Hey, what about Twinkle Twinkle?" And everybody's like, "That's great."
Yeah.
But and we can own it. We can own it, but we have to sing it ourselves. And so I hear from a cube, "I can sing." Right? Literally that. I'm like, "Who's that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's she was new. She was a video editor."
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you ever heard the second verse of Twinkle Twinkle. I'd never heard it. It is so freaking creepy.
It's creepy as fuck.
So that day we put her in the small audio booth. She sings it, and
It's brilliant. Still, probably. I mean, to me, trying to be unbiased. It still is probably one of my favorite trailers.
that was
Just
really good
in general of games.
And then Ridley Scott borrowed Twinkle Twinkle for Prometheus. That's okay because I borrowed some stuff from Black Hawk Down and Modern Warfare 3.
There you go.
So we
What was your reaction to Dead Space 2, guys? I'm curious when that came out.
We were part of it.
we were.
Yeah.
I mean, we were on it for half the
year.
project.
That was
Almost.
at least a year.
Yeah, we're on it for about a year. Did a lot of the early story development, some of the early
Changed the bosses.
A lot of the enemy designs, things like that. I remember capturing everything for the pack and doing a lot of that pack stuff. Finally using some. I think that was the first time we used mocap on some of the enemies. Was for DS2.
I mean, I was happy to see it get a 90 because to me it just felt like
We just got robbed.
it was the strength of the franchise, that it was more proof that what we had created had legs, was, still really interesting to people, because it was an iteration, but they didn't reinvent anything. It was a lot of the same core mechanics and everything we had built. So that was great. Like, okay, it's still super popular. It's it's a quality franchise that we created. So I was happy that they did really well.
Yeah, like the stuff, like some of the ideas, like the grabbing the end of the necromorphs thing and shooting it back at them. That was from Dead Space 1. We just couldn't get it in working correctly, right? I think maybe you could grab something and spin, but the whole plan was to be able to, impale them and shoot them, take their arms off and see the arm impaled. And so some of the ideas we just brought over that we couldn't get in.
It was like picking stuff up off the editing room floor and like
really
going, oh, yeah, let's dust this off and see if we can get this in.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about making a sequel like that is you finish a game and you always want to do it again better. And, like Dead Space 2, when we started, it was like, okay, here's all the stuff we couldn't do, all the stuff we wanted to improve, stuff we barely were able to get in, the first time. Let's do the better version of it.
Yep.
And they did, to their credit, to that team's credit, they shipped something really good.
Yeah, it was cool. You're right though, like getting to look at something that's already built and be like, okay, what are the things that we couldn't do before? Like I still remember getting in there and animating the first helmet for Dead Space 2 and like how it all stacks up and compresses into a little, and I was like, oh yeah, this is so freaking cool. So yeah, I mean, being able to do the things that you wanted to before finally, because you have a great game already as a foundation that you're not worrying about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is probably the best part about doing a good sequel for sure.
Hey, did you know that when I made the deal with Paul Lee, they kept thinking it was about money, right? And so, but I kept saying, no, I just want to make my own game. And then so finally, when he agrees on it, he says, okay, now what are we talking, Glenn? I'm like, oh, well, I was thinking of moving. How about you pay for my move? And he said, okay, but we're not supposed to move within 50 miles of the place. Are you supposed to be outside? And I'm like, well, Paul, you're the president of EA. And he goes, you're right. Okay, we'll pay for the move. And it's like, okay, well, now what, Glenn? And this comes back from Crystal, where we make crazy deals. And I said, oh, okay, you're still asking. So I said, I pay 1.5 points off my mortgage. And he's like, I'm the president of EA, I'll do that. Right? And so, no big deal. I had no idea. Then I went and I moved and all that, and they turned in the bills. I had no idea. My wife has done that. And I remember Nick calls me in. I've never seen him so mad. What the hell is this? 125, 130,000 more a month? And I'm like, that's how much it costs? Yes, or something like that. It was more than I ever thought. But he had this smile on his face, like, all right. I don't think we ever thought really about money about it. It was just like this game was about. Yeah, it was just. I don't think like I said, we just went from one game to another. We were just so excited that we made video games for a living. We had some great ones in there.
Yeah. Nobody, I mean, back when we started making games, like, you didn't go into making games thinking you were doing it to make a ton of money or a career. It was like, I love video games. I want to be an animator. I love video games. Like, I don't think anything about like what my future is going to be. Like, I don't think I'm going to make good money. It was just passion.
There's no college degrees in it and everything.
I think I graduated with the first computer animation degree given by any school in the nation.
And I heard they wish they never gave it to
they probably did.
So
how old were you guys on Dead Space 1, if you don't mind me asking?
I was like 65.
I was 40 something.
Yeah, I was 35 when it started, I think.
Yeah, I was probably 30 maybe.
Probably
how many years? A couple of years older than me.
Yeah.
Well, what year was it?
It was 2007. 2006 we started. Yeah.
Yeah, so 33.
Yeah, 44, 43.
Yeah.
So I asked Glenn this last time I chatted. Metacritic, Bret and Chris, what do you think about Metacritic? It's a flawed system, I feel like. Do you guys agree?
100%. Yeah, I just wish someone could explain to me why big publications somehow don't count, yet you can have like Bob's Game Shack and Serbia count for the same. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. It feels very clickbaity. It's very unfair, I think, to games, and it really has huge impact on the teams and the studios. And I think people don't really understand that, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had talked about that. At one point they wanted to link our, people's salaries to it and I mean, bonuses. And we fought like hell. we fought like hell to not have that happen.
Yeah, and it's also the scores have definitely gone down on average over time. Games that would have gotten 85, 10, 15 years ago get 70s now. So there's been sort of a hardening of it from the critics' point of view. I think there's, this is a much longer discussion, but there's things around, negative articles get more clicks and things like that. So if you're,
100%.
if you're kind of like on the fence with something, might as well really like destroy it so you get more clicks. Things like that are unfortunate in the industry, I think. But definitely like the average Metacritic score to me, it's much harder to get into those 80s and 90s.
Like how few 90s there are now. But you're totally right. I mean, it's almost like they're motivated to give something a 50, so people will be like, oh, wonder why they gave it a 50. Wonder why they gave it a 30. And like, really? Like even and maybe this is just because I know what it takes to make games, like to give a game like a 30 or a 40, it's like that's almost insane. Like to be that low a score.
That doesn't make sense.
So Washington Post, I think, gave Uncharted 4 a 4 out of 10. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, and that is disrespectful, and it's really I don't know, immature. And I mean, if you also read some of them and they get sarcastic and they think they're funny and everything, they don't realize that maybe 100 or 75 people to 200, depending on the game, have put their lives to work on that for 3 years and never thought it was funny or never thought it was sarcastic. And what you do is you are hurting the studio. A bad review, I mean, a horrible one like that, all of a sudden your management comes in and said, well, your reviews weren't good or this wasn't good. You need to lay off 30 people. And that happens all the time. Yeah. Or they come out like with the one about, they said, I was like pushing the crunch, but I was just thanking. And, then that article came out, it stops people from, you can't hire for a couple of weeks till you clear the air and you get that stuff out,
People love controversy. They always want to try to spin something.
But we're not trying to, be controversial. We're quietly making a game.
Remember on Dead Space, we actually got an 89 because one review we got a 60 one outlet, and
so dumb.
we just missed a 90. I think it was on Xbox.
But if you remember, so they came back because she got so much heat.
Yeah, she got
that. I mean, the people were all over her, and they finally came out and said the original person couldn't do it, so they brought in a freelancer, and if you take that score out, it's a 90, 91.
Yeah.
And so that's where Metacritic, there you have somebody, and she said, I don't play these kind of games. I don't like horror games. I don't like this. And we're like, why are you okay? So
I feel like there's a certain lack of sometimes an editorial responsibility. No, like there's no standard to what a game score is. You can give Uncharted 4 a 4. Well, why? Like hasn't anyone agreed on what a 4 really means? To me, a 4 means the thing barely is playable.
Yeah.
But like where is the standard there, and where is the standard for putting the right reviewer who actually might like this kind of game or be interested or have some knowledge around the kind of game to be the one reviewing it? New IP gets slaughtered for this reason. You get people that don't really understand what the game is about. You get someone who doesn't like that kind of game that decides to, the editor puts them on to review it. And you get a terrible score because of that. Whereas people that actually like that particular genre would say it was, they love it. So I don't know. It feels like sometimes there's a lack of responsibility on their part to at least make things feel somewhat, like you give a level, make things feel a little more fair.
Here's what a guy told me not too long ago. He said, look, we'll get a review in. Maybe, on a Tuesday, and we got to have it out by Thursday. And he said, everybody looks around. Nobody wants to work at night on this. So they give it to the newest person. Said a lot of times, the newest person will get it, and they'll have to work through the night and have to get it done. The thing that came across was, hey, we don't want to ruin our night doing this, so we give it to somebody else. If we have more time, maybe we'll do that one. Obviously that's not for everybody, but that was, hey, this is the wink, wink. This is what's happening.
Yeah, you get a lot too where it's so clear that they haven't even played much of the game. Where you're reading the review and you're like, what are you talking about?
You never got to the end.
That is not the game at all. And that's very frustrating too, because again, you're getting lambasted for laziness on their end, basically. So really unfortunate. Yeah. So I think you hear loud and clear what we're saying about that.
We agree that we should have something, but it hasn't been tweaked or fixed or changed in 30 years or whatever it is, right? You need to throw some bad ones out. You need to charge people $5,000 a year to be on Metacritic, and you have to give them reasons to want to be on it. You got or something. I don't know, because we're just letting some people just.
I think you nailed it where you said it's rage bait kind of thing. You know, it's got to be either really positive or really negative to get clicks in this day and age, and that's what happens. It hurts. You know, games like Days Gone and Immortals and Callisto. They're the games that get hurt from it. That could have had a potential sequel that would have been really great.
Yeah,
they should have had a sequel for both. They really should.
All three should have a sequel, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's crazy how that may have been the case should those scores have been slightly different. Those things might have been in production, right?
Yep.
And,
well, I don't think it was. The Metacritic hurt us with the fans, and now the fans are getting over because we had so many downloads on PlayStation. Yeah. But that's still, it's still lingering out there. That was a tough one there.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever talk about doing Advanced Warfare 2?
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, we actually even had a little prototype of it that was pretty fucking badass.
We did a print, a 3D print.
Yeah, we had a whole. At one point, my team took all the systems and worked with design to figure out like how would we advance these systems, and we did a fully animated sequence of what the gameplay would be like with advanced, mag gloves and boost jump and running the walls, the whole thing, and it was a pretty compelling video.
Well, that's because I go in with, I think, is the best pitch of my life with Advanced Warfare. We worked our ass off on the pitch, and then we had rules and everything, and I was really excited. I go in there and give this pitch, and you're like, you fucking nuts, Glenn? Whoa, it's a future and all this, and what's a boost jump? I'm like, it's simple as. So they didn't know what what the exoskeleton was either. So we had PV builders, but you were doing some animation. So we came out of there, and I'm like, oh man, I knew what I did wrong, which was I kind of overloaded. I gave too much at first because the game we shipped, they were like, Glenn, what's a walking tank? What? And so that's the first thing you see in the game. We're like, what the hell? But do you know how that? I was in Europe on doing the marketing, the PR for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And I'm at my last day, 30 days, whatever it is. And I get a call at night. I'm with a dinner with journalists in the UK, and I get a call, and they say, you got to go to Europe. No, you got to go to Russia. And I said, I just spent 30 days, man. And like, the Russians are the enemy, no way. And they're like, I said, I feel bad, and I feel guilty, and they go, no, don't worry about it. But I'm like, no, I'm tired. So I said, send Bret. Bret goes, I'm not going, right? So I said,
why not, Bret?
We were all kind of worried that we had done they were the enemy,
Yeah.
No, I think we're all tired. Finishing an international trip at that time wasn't a great thing for me. But
it was guilt, I think I felt a little guilt. So I sit down after with the journalist, and I just go, my next game is not going to be a country as the enemy. I'm not going to have a country. I had no idea what I was going to do, but then we sat down and all of a sudden, right, the PMCs just kept coming up at that time.
Yep.
And
Yep,
hey,
the
what we
Elysium,
predicted kind of almost happened with the Wagner Group, right? When they were on the path to go after Putin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we did about 6 or 7 months of story and look development for Advanced Warfare 2.
Shit.
We were really like 100% in. The whole team wanted to do it. We're really into it. And then it turned into we're going to do World War II instead. And that was cool. I mean, that was like we were happy to pivot to it.
But you can't use anything for Advanced Warfare, can you?
No, we had to start from scratch.
And it was so different. I mean, World
No.
War II, there were so many things
Everything
that came
had to
with
change,
that.
yeah.
Although, I mean, I can only speak personally, like, of all three of the Call of Duties we did, World War II probably was the most fun to me.
Hmm.
And I mean, it wasn't maybe quite as creative as Advanced Warfare was, but there was something about making a game around like a true, real experience that just had a different level of challenge. It had a different level of like gravitas to it, right? Where it's like you wanted to stay really true to the experience, but you wanted to make it fun. But it was it was always a very tricky challenge there. And for me, I really enjoyed that.
I remember you and I would struggle sometimes. You were like, there's no freaking helicopters, there's no Stinger missiles or whatever. But yeah, it was a great challenge in that we did, today with modern, we did the future and we did the past. And that was just like all three creative challenges are so different.
Yeah, 100%.
That to me, it was that was just a good amount. And then to throw in zombies, to do our own zombies.
You must be proud of that World War II Normandy scene because that's got like hundreds of millions of views across social media. It's like one of the most viewed missions of all time.
I made him start over. Remember, we had to
did
start
so
over.
much work on that. I mean, just the Higgins boat approach to that beach.
Oh,
Like, we shot that over and over again, and just getting the performances right and getting the line of sight right on the beach, and just how much you could see over the edge, and then the audio, and then the crashing into the beach, and just seeing guys getting shredded. I mean, there was so much emotional impact to that opening sequence.
I think we spent like a year and a half.
Oh my God!
really?
Well,
we tore it. We started over.
yeah.
Because remember that the sky didn't look right with the way they were.
Right.
Try having gameplay when you can't really shoot anything and you're in a shooting game.
Yeah.
And so it was just trying to avoid and then
Well, it drove a lot of our systems too. I mean, it was the first
Yeah.
level we did, and so when we first did it, we didn't have health packs. You were still getting regenerative health.
Right.
You were still knee sliding up behind the hedgehogs, and so a lot of these things when we would play them, we're like, this feels weird, right? You got these guns shredding you, and all you got to do is hide for a few seconds, and now you're healthy again. And that was kind of what the impetus for adding health packs were. And then, okay, well, how do you get health packs? Now you buddies are going to start throwing you health packs, and and then changing it to a dive to prone and putting you into prone, which again that changed the whole feeling of that experience and made it feel much more.
I also
intense and
remember
impactful.
we got all the details inside those bunkers up there. The one guy's name was the Beast, right? And I don't know how many Americans he killed. They had been practicing, so they had math on the wall on how to shoot, if there's if the wind is coming in and everything. So they really had it set up, and we kept it pretty darn close to what we saw there. Obviously, we have to change things, but
A lot of research, and Marty was
so much research.
and Marty was great. Like the amount of background stuff that he helped with.
I spent 2.5 years studying World War II, and then we took Marty, who was the head of the. Now we're supposed to be talking about Dead Space.
We got sidetracked. That's all right. No, because I just love that game, and I saw Chris and Brett some behind the scenes of you guys shooting World War II on the mocap stage. It just sprang to mind. I'll ask you a couple more. Thanks again for your time, guys. I really appreciate it. What was your thoughts on co-op in Dead Space and then Dead Space 3 as well? I'm curious because you guys didn't work at all on Dead Space 3.
No.
No.
Yeah, I was always of the opinion that co-op hurt horror
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
you've got another character running around doing dumb stuff, kind of breaking the immersion a bit. I didn't think it was terribly successful with Resident Evil 5 when that had come out. That came out just a little bit after Dead Space 1. And then when that started to become like a push to do it. Well, I wasn't part of it, but like on 2 even we had talked about it, and 2 had the multiplayer piece to it. It just I don't. To me, it hurts the experience. I like survival horror when I'm alone.
Yeah.
I'm scared. The game's trying to scare me. I don't have the help of another player. It's very different.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think that just
absolutely.
the solidarity of being on your own with no one to help you, no one there to talk to you or anything. And again, for me, I think another part of it is something about not having as much darkness to like it being like there's, and I'm not really sure why, but somehow things coming out of the dark is scarier than things coming out of the snow. And like it's just that's a mental thing. It's everybody's scared of the dark, right? And I think to me it just wasn't as scary.
Well, think about
3, they turned into a real action game.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
very different.
You didn't have limited inventory. You had tons and tons of ammo.
It wasn't
really
survival horror, really. It was
It's a
action.
very different game. Yeah.
They made it an action game, and that desire to make it an action game had even started on 2 to
Yeah.
a certain extent. That kind of from above, like EA had.
Oh yeah, they had
wanted,
told me before I left.
Yeah, they wanted to
that market.
capture more of that market.
Mm.
And we really pushed back on that when we were starting 2. Of like, look, we just made a great horror game. Don't fuck it up and try to turn it into an action game. Give people more of what they want and do it better. And we're really holding that line on 2. And I think by the time 3 rolled around, they had to capitulate, to some degree.
Do you think that's thanks to Call of Duty, games like that they started going in that direction?
I don't know. I mean, Call of Duty was already huge by the time Dead Space had come out.
True,
So
yeah.
maybe, I don't know.
But they wanted more sales, right? And even on
Yeah.
Dead Space 2, we went to center screen aiming,
Yeah.
which was the first person thing, right? And it did change the feel of the combat.
I didn't like
I mean, it was definitely different. There were people that like one way better, people like the other way better.
Yeah.
But,
Oh man, just being on COD,
yeah.
you can't imagine, people scream at us, your shotgun sucks, your shotgun sucks. But you don't know how
That's the
many,
nice comment.
but you don't know how many on the other side are going, your shotgun is fantastic in this game.
Yeah.
It
You never
is,
please everybody.
it is.
How do you even how do you deal with it? That's the thing.
You try not to
You
deal
go
with
with your
it.
gut. Yeah.
I just don't have social media. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's a good
that's
idea.
my solution. Like LinkedIn. That's all I got. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's tough. I'll never forget this guy every day at 7:00, I would get, excuse my language, fix your fucking game every day from this guy, and it went on a year. One day I came home, whatever, and I was mad, just like what the hell? And I said, well, then fix your fucking aim. And simple. Oh man, the press blew up on it. I got banned from Twitter by Activision for 3 months. I remember that.
Talk about
Really?
people that have social media.
Nobody, come on, it's,
But it got bad though. I mean, didn't you
I
get
thought it
phone
was-
calls? Didn't you get people that hunted down your phone number
well, we
and
had,
called you?
yeah,
during COD?
I've had armed guards at my house for a while, for a
Crazy.
few weeks. Yeah. The stuff is crazy. I mean, you get people that will drive out here from New Jersey with a painted car, and what do you do? And we had to have special locks and everything for the doors at the Sledgehammer.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some amazing fans of like all the games we've worked
Yeah.
on. Outstanding.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that there are some bad ones too that
We
really
shouldn't even talk about it because
the vast majority are the best in the world.
Did you
100%.
think you'd be speaking about Dead Space all these years later, guys?
No way. I never did.
no.
No, it's the most asked about game I've ever made, and
Wow.
we worked on Call of Duty. I
Call of
get
Duty,
way more
yeah.
questions and interviews about Dead Space than I do about Call of Duty.
100%. I actually signed a lady's Dead Space tattoo once, which I thought was crazy. I thought it was crazy. I'm like, how is this an actual
It's
thing?
coming off. Yeah, I get pictures of new tattoos a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
still
That's
in
nice.
their mind, but
I mean, we thought we had made a really good game, and that we're all really proud of it, very proud of it. And that was enough at the time, to know that we had done something really of quality. And we stuck to our guns and made the game we really wanted to make. And that was plenty. And the fact that it's had a life of its own and exists well, so far, past what we thought is great. Super proud of it.
we thought it was going to be the beginning. It was the beginning of EA doing some new IPs, but it just ended.
Yeah.
It was like those two games and not much, no fanfare. And so, to think that we got it approved and done through EA, God bless them, because I didn't think that was what they were into at that time, but
Yeah.
they did it. They did it.
It is kind of crazy though. I mean, I can't speak for you guys, but I look back at all the games that I've worked on over the years, which I think I'm getting close to 30 now at this point, and it is still probably the most fun I've ever had making a
It
game.
was really fun.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Like just even when it was 11 o'clock at night and you're like looking for someone to come look at something you just did because you're excited about it and laughing about it, and it was a lot of fun. We had a great team doing it with us too. Every person on that team were great people.
Do you guys ever go back and play it?
My son did recently,
Oh, nice.
which was pretty cool because I
That's
didn't
cool.
let him play it for a long time. And he loved it. He actually today, when I told him that we were coming to talk to you, the first thing out of his mouth was like, "Please tell me you're making another Dead Space game." I'm like, I wish, but now we're talking about the other one.
We tried, actually, the three of us.
Yeah.
What do you
We
mean?
tried Dead Space 4. They
You're
said no.
kidding. Don't say that.
All three of us sat there and watched
Oh,
it. We
Yeah,
were
I
ready.
mean, we're talking this year.
and what? They didn't budge.
Well, we didn't go too deep. They just said, "No, we're not interested right now. We appreciate it, blah, blah, blah." And, we know who to talk to, so we didn't go take it any further. And we respect their opinion. They know their numbers and what they have to ship and all that. So
Yeah, the industry's in a weird place right now too.
it's a
man.
tough time.
People
right
are
now.
really hesitant to take chances on things. So you can, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows? Maybe one day. I think we'd all love to do it.
Yeah. We got some ideas.
So you would go back, you guys, in a heartbeat.
I'd make a Dead Space 4.
Yes. Brett might have trouble right now. Brett's got a good gig going. Well, you got a good gig too.
I'm not
man.
saying-
No, you've all got good gigs.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
I would make a Dead Space 4. That's
I'm
all I'm
sitting
saying.
on
Yeah.
my.
No, I love my gig. I got no complaints.
Brett, are you
whatsoever.
with Dan Hauser now?
I am. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Absurd Ventures. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. It's really, really cool.
Awesome.
Can't talk about it, but
No,
it's,
of course, yeah.
but it's he's fantastic, incredibly creative, and we're having a great time.
Is he a Dead Space fan?
Oh, I need to ask him.
Oh,
I
you
don't
didn't
think
bring it up.
I don't think we've talked Dead Space yet, so I'll find out.
And Chris, what are you working on at the moment?
So we were working on Ready or Not still.
Oh,
Got some
great game.
Thanks for that. Thanks, man. We have some other really exciting things on the horizon that we are trying to hire for right now. But
Nice.
Ready or Not is a great game. We have a great team that's fully remote, like global, all over the place.
Isn't that
all over the
tough?
world. It is definitely challenging. It is definitely challenging. But the passion of the team is there, and we have a great product already. And we're excited to grow on it and do some other cool stuff too. So yeah.
And Glenn, are you still cooking up something over there or what?
Yeah, I have been working on a smaller project, and we're trying to get funding right now. We've got it's a pretty exciting project. It's smaller, and I'm not directing. I'm going to be executive producing it. And when you hear what it's about, if we get the funding, you'll understand. It's something kind of special for me.
Amazing, guys. Thanks for the time. Is there anything you want to say to the Dead Space fans, each of you, that have tuned in today?
Well,
They start writing letters to EA telling them they want Dead Space 4.
Well, they're going to now. That you've
Or
put
tell
that
them
out there.
to at least let them license it. I mean, come on, license it, EA.
just that, for me, I'm just, thrilled that people play it, that they like it, that the remake was, well received, and that franchise has had such a life beyond what we thought of. So I love the fans, and I'm so thrilled that we have so many of them. So it's great.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, the amount of like cosplay and stuff you see out there, people in their Isaac suits and building the weapon. I mean, Glenn sent me something of a guy that built one of the weapons, like fully functional line gun the other day. Just the amount of excitement that people still have around that franchise is, it's humbling, right? Because again, I think all of us, we did that game just out of excitement and passion. Never thought that this many years later people would still be talking about it. And it's pretty awesome. And yeah, I mean, EA gave us a great opportunity to do it too. I mean, I think one of you guys said it. They left us to our own devices, and we came up with something great. And so some credit there for them as well.
Don't you wish companies let you did that a little bit more these days? Let you go off and do what you envisioned?
A lot of people have left us for, even on Call of Duty. I mean, they have. I think they know when they hire a team that they got to leave them alone. But at the same time, they had some great, really great people to talk to that have been in it for a long time. I really enjoyed working with them as well. But if I could say something to the fans, it is Chris used the word, which is humbling. We never expected this. Like Chris said, we had a bunch of us had finished James Bond, and it was a good game, but it wasn't. We thought it was going to get artistically, and I don't mean art. I just mean as a piece of art. I had hoped for a better score, so I was really down a bit. And so getting into this game was like, yes, we're going to focus on quality. We didn't think about much more than just thinking about quality. Mm-hmm. But what the fans have done. And I heard the other day that the director of Romulus came out and said that Dead Space was one of his. The fact that we're maybe influencing this generation of content makers in any little way is probably more than we ever expected, and probably something we're very, very thankful for. Mm-hmm. And I think if I could say one more thing, it's not just the fans have been so positive and so nice, and like I get stuff all the time still from the fans on Dead Space, and so I thank you for still sticking with us, man. Yeah. It's this weird journey that it gets bigger each year,
Thank you very much,
guys.
I
want to thank you, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure meeting Bret, Chris, and pleasure with you as always, Glenn. Also, quickly, last one. Did you ever find out about the Modern Warfare 3 ending, Glenn, that I asked you about last time?
Which
the strange guy that is
the
silhouette in
the
I remember when we added it.
Yeah.
But we didn't know. We never decided who it was. Right?
No, it was just a teaser.
Yeah.
It was just a teaser.
I thought we said it was one of it was like Makarov's guy or something.
I don't know if we ever had an actual answer for that.
I think we were just keeping the door open. We wanted to allude to the fact that there was something more.
Yeah. The one scene that we didn't have anything to do with it, I just want to say it, is when they blew up the baby carriage.
Yeah, the family vacation, whatever family vacation.
Yeah.
We weren't big fans of that.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. This was great.
Absolutely. We always love. I mean, we did another one of these for another game a couple weeks ago. We were just saying, like, it's as much fun for us, I think, because we don't really sit around and think about this stuff anymore, right? You kind of move on, and I'm thinking about my game, and they're thinking about their games, and to go back and think about like what the origin of so much of like, I mean, really our career, the foundation of a lot of our career really is really fun to think about and talk about and reminisce about. So I definitely appreciate the time to force us to get together to do it. It's
Yeah,
it's a
can you
lot of
believe
fun.
just about a week ago, we did one of these on Gex,
Yeah.
the Gex series. It was a guy's favorite game, so, and he knew games, right? And
I think he knew more about those games than we did.
none I can remember, that's for sure. Yeah. But hey, I love it when they do the research show like that.
It's pretty cool.
Thank you. And on behalf of all the fans, I want to say thank you three, for all your contributions in Dead Space and all your games over the years. I've had the pleasure of playing a lot of your games and a lot of great memories. So thank you very much.
And then
Thanks,
since you were
man.
3,
Thanks.
thanks
I
a lot
know,
for that.
I know.
Make us feel even older than we already
Yeah,
feel.
he goes, I
Appreciate
remember
that
when you
there,
had
Dan.
hair. Yeah.
I got it for my 3rd birthday. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.